While we've known it for a while, on Friday, the Carey Price era in Montreal officially ended with his trade to San Jose. On this bonus episode of Locked On Canadiens, we'll talk to you about the trade itself and what this might set up for your Montreal Canadiens.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into this bonus episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you so much for tuning in and making us your first and hopefully now second listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. My name is Boisvert, also known as @MaybeATeam, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Actor Stick, and we have news to break down. Just moments ago, we learned that the Montreal Canadiens have traded Carey Price's contract to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a 2026 fifth-round pick. With a 2026 fifth-round pick, my mistake. In exchange for defenseman Gannon Larocque. Let's do feelings first, right? Feelings first on this show. We're fans. That is the lens in which we interact with this news. Your feelings first, Laura. Other than anger at Kent Hughes for dropping a trade at 5:00 on a Friday when we were trying to go enjoy our weekend, we can leave that one aside. What are your next feelings?
I am upset. I tried to preempt all of the opposing fans' jokes about San Jose Sharks legend Carey Price by doing one myself, and I have to tell you, it did not help. Did not make me feel any better to preempt it. It stings. Honestly, we knew this was coming. For all he said, we don't need to trade Carey Price. Yes, you did, and you had to throw in a sweetener. So, honestly, we knew it was coming. It was the most logical thing. Now we do have some hope that there's another trade coming. We know that Marco D'Amico reported that this was something that Canadians were looking at. But I don't know right now at this moment. I know we'll talk about it a little bit later in this episode. I don't know right now if another trade is going to make me feel better. I need a couple of days for it to settle, right? And I think what's really, really important, and I think any Canadiens fan will agree, is that they have to do that gimmicky thing where they sign the guy for a day so that he can retire a Montreal Canadien, and they should. And I know you have some thoughts about how that could go next year.
Yeah, I think that if they go that route, which they should, that this feeling you have today of, oh man, Carey Price is no longer a Montreal Canadien, I think this will be the last time you feel that. I think if they go that route of signing him to the one-day contract so he can retire as a member of this team, and then the following year is just a Carey Price love fest where we are, next summer we're going to learn that he's in the Hall of Fame, right? Like we know that we're fairly certain that's coming. He'll retire as a Montreal Canadien. They'll get to celebrate him at the Bell Center, knowing full well that this is over. There's actually closure now. I feel like that's an important aspect of this that I'm kind of looking forward to because, in my life of watching this team, there haven't been a lot of those moments. They tried to shoehorn PK Subban coming back to the Bell Center and doing a PK Subban night, which was deserved given his impact on the fan base. But with that said, the return that Carey Price is going to have, knowing that it's over and that we can celebrate just the breadth of his accomplishments all at once, I think it's going to make things like this worth it, right? Like it's going to make this sucks. This sucks that this is happening. The fact that his name will be associated with another team. If you look on like HockeyDB or Hockey Reference or even Wikipedia, it will never say that he played for this team. It'll never say played for San Jose Sharks, but we'll know in the same way that we joke that like the Arizona Coyotes had one of the best rosters because they had Pavel Datsyuk and Chris Pronger at one point and Marian Hossa, like, right? Like they loaded up on all those guys. I think that, it's fairly obvious that that's not really the connection that anyone is going to truly make. I think we're kind of over that as a sport, as people who watch this sport. It's not really something that we do with earnestness. We're like, oh, well, you can't forget he played for San Jose. No, he didn't. He hasn't played hockey in 2 years. Like he's just not, that's not a thing. So I think I'm with you. It doesn't really bother me, but it doesn't do anything for me in like a meme sense either.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of a player who hasn't played in 2 years, that was also the return. I know we'll talk about that in just a moment. But I do want to hear from people, right? Like we talked so much about Carey Price and whether he deserved to be first ballot Hall of Famer. There's always all these conversations. Oh, the cups, blah blah blah. Was he really the best? I want to know, to you listeners, what Carey Price meant to you. Personally, to me, Carey Price, in the time that I've been watching hockey, Carey Price, and we know about Saku. Like Saku is like my favorite all-time Hab. He's the person I watched that made me fall in love with hockey, not just the Habs, but hockey in general. Saku was that guy. But the first time that I ever felt that the Montreal Canadiens had a best at something in my time of watching the Canadiens was Carey Price, right? They had the best goaltender. They had a guy who was no questions asked all-star, right? And sometimes he was the only one. And I know people will say, well, Shea Weber was he was one of those guys for Nashville, right? He was
Yeah.
a great player in Montreal. There's a lot to be said about that Stanley Cup run, about, him and the course of the Montreal Canadiens and all of that. But when in the moment that he was the best, literal best defenseman in the world, he was not a Montreal Canadian. He
Sure.
was a Nashville Predator. So for me, what Carey Price represents is my team having the best of something.
Yeah, I mean, you can go that route with PK too, right? Like PK he won a Norris. Yes, it was a shortened season, but his peak was there. But Carey Price, you can say he won a Hart Trophy. He was the greatest in the sport for a time, right? Like they only give out one of those a year. It's not like every player has the chance to say that they were the best player in the league in any given year. Carey Price gets to say that. Let's take a look at the, I guess, return. We'll talk about the 5th round pick going out as well first. That seems a lot lower than it probably should have been, right? Like that feels like Montreal got a pretty decent deal here.
I just felt like, we know that he's not going to be able to play with his injury. Like, and it's so sad because I literally looked it up to see what his injury history was. And there's an article from like a year ago saying, oh, he's the healthiest he's ever been in his life. But apparently
This is Larock, correct?
yes, Larock, yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, like, his bones are made of sand, essentially.
Yeah.
And I feel really bad because I do know he came with promise, right? And the return was him and some other guy that the Sharks needed to get rid of. This is essentially the Habs need to get rid of something. The Sharks need to get rid of a person.
Yeah.
So, let's just help each other out. And the 5th round pick to me is the sweetener in the deal. And I don't necessarily know that I agree with that part.
I thought the sweetener was going to be more. I thought it was going to be a lot more than a 5th. We were kind of talking like maybe a 2nd round pick. Montreal has 2 of them. Like you would, if I was San Jose, that's probably what I was coming into that negotiation asking for. But with Garner Larock, so he's had surgically repaired. He's had both of his hips surgically repaired. One after the other. First the right, then the left, I believe. He did not play at all last year. He only played 9 games the season before. So this, to me, I mean, it doesn't seem like this is a player you can count on playing hockey anytime soon, if ever again. I saw on the Habs subreddit, someone joked, excuse me, the last time the Sharks threw in a defenseman in a trade with Montreal, it turned out pretty good for the Canadiens, that being Josh Georges, which I got a kick out of because I was like, that is funny. But I don't see that being the route that this ends up going. I think that I think the Sharks were 1 contract below the contract limit. So if they wanted to trade for Carey Price, that would have put them at the limit. So this gets them right back down to 49 at a 50 contract. So that's the reason for that sort of aspect of this swap. So I don't think we can count on that player or that pick being anything of consequence.
Well, this is my thing, is that like the Sharks got a lot of flexibility out of this. They got the ability to add another player to their contract list, as well as the savings, the cap savings that they might need, but they're more likely to need the cap floor if they want to trade away, like if they want to sell players. So like this gave the Sharks a lot of flexibility. So I feel like Kent Hughes did the Sharks a huge favor, and all he got was like, a player that we might never see on the ice again.
Yeah. No, and that's a great segue because in our next segment, where I want to talk about the flexibility this offers to both teams, and we'll talk about the salary cap implications when we come back on this bonus episode of Locked On Canadiens. The NFL season is almost here. Well, it's actually here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Look, I love using FanDuel because it fits the way I like to play. I love player props. I mean, on Thursday night for the season opener, I was putting props down on anytime touchdowns. I did have a Saquon Barkley one, so pretty happy with how that played out. And I like jumping into the live action as the game unfolds. You know, what's the outcome of this drive? It makes every game more exciting. It makes every play more exciting, whether I'm watching my team, the Washington Commanders, or just keeping an eye on my fantasy lineup or some other action that I've got going. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays, or in this case, Thursdays and Fridays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's talk money, Laura. So this is a salary cap move, right? The two players involved are likely never going to play again. The pick that was involved has about a 10% chance of developing into a player who will play 200 NHL games, according to Byron Bayer's model with his draft picks. So this is about cap. Let's do the Sharks part of this first, because we had a question about it on Friday about, you know, why would every team's at the floor? Like, what benefit is there to adding a contract if you're already at the floor? Well, you look at the San Jose Sharks as they're laid out on Puckpedia, and it makes a ton of sense why they would want to get a contract like this. So at forward, they have the following players on expiring contracts heading into UFA. They have Alex Wenberg making $5 million, Jeff Skinner making $3 million, Carl Grundstrom making 1.8, Ryan Reeves at 1.35, and that's it for the UFAs. There's some RFAs in there as well. But on defense, they have Nick Leddy with $4 million, John Klingberg at $4 million, Mario Ferraro at 3.25, Timothy Liljegren at 3, Vincent Desharnais at 2, and that's it for UFAs there. And then Alex Nedeljkovic in goal at $2.5 million. They have a lot of expiring contracts this year
with guys that people might want, right?
Yes,
like
those are
a bunch of trade deadline deals. That's what that looks like to me.
Yeah, you run down that list and you're like, I could see a second for that guy. I could see a second and a second for that guy. Like, it make the Sharks. I was a big skeptic of the way that Mike Grier was running that operation, and now the vision is so painfully clear. Like, they've already built such a great depth of really talented players and prospects. And this is going to be like their last really big sell-off, and they're going to cash in big time, and then that team is going to be ready to go, right? Like, they're going to be a few years away from a playoff berth, and they're going to be loaded with prospects and draft capital. It's going to be really impressive to watch that team. So consider myself a convert on the Mike Grier San Jose Sharks. I believe that they have done a tremendous job rebuilding. They have done what Chicago has failed to do, in my estimation. So that's why it makes a lot of sense for San Jose to take on a player like Carey Price, because now they have, I believe, I'm looking this up now, they have a $16 million cushion between where they are now and the floor, which means they can ship out $16 million and still be fine. Then at that point, you know, they're probably bringing up prospects. Maybe they're just bringing back warm bodies, but they have shielded themselves from being able to say, well, we can't trade that guy at the deadline because we'll be underneath the salary floor. So that really a smart move by the Sharks. The acquisition costs, you know, they didn't get too much. They didn't give up too much. So it's really just a way for them to safeguard their salary cap going into next season. Really, really appreciate and understand why the Sharks decided to do that. For the Canadiens, the answer is simple. They're out of LTIR for the first time in forever. They're not going to operate under a long-term injured reserve, which is great. It means that they can accrue cap space throughout the season, so that when they get to the salary cap, or when they get to the trade deadline, they will have more cap space than what their actual cap space is, because it's prorated based on how deep into the season you go. So they'll have more cap space at the deadline should they choose to add. But it also means that next year, if a lot of their young players on their rookie contracts hit their rookie bonuses, they won't go into bonus overage next year like they are this year. So there are many reasons why it is fruitful for the Canadiens to be below the LTIR threshold. But first and foremost, and I think you teased this, and I know Marco D'Amico set this up as well, this gives the Canadiens some breathing room to make one final addition. And it's sort of now, I in my estimation, he has between Kent Hughes can operate between now and like the golf tournament and try to find a way to bolster this team with the $4.5 million in cap space they have now, right? Like, it's exciting now that we look at it this way and go, oh wow, there's a big chunk of cap space now that for the Canadiens to use.
Yeah, especially if they trade Mike Matheson at the deadline, then they'll have like almost $9 million, or maybe a little bit over $9 million. I just honestly, I knew that this is a thing that they had to do. I know it gives them flexibility. I know like they're gonna need that bonus overage breathing room, because Ivan Demidov is not. He's not going to hit his bonuses. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then you've got Slavkovsky's probably determined to hit his, and then we don't know what Lane Hudson's going to do.
I don't believe he's on rookie bonuses anymore because he's going to go into his first year of his big boy contract, right? Like his baby teeth have fallen out.
The narratives are going to be so much more annoying now that he's making all that money.
That's to quote Don Draper. That's what the money's for, right? Like that's what he's got to do.
Yeah, so that makes sense. But Lane Hudson is a thing, right?
Yep. Still on his last year of his entry level.
Some determined guy in Laval is going to be a thing. So yes, I guess that does make sense. Anyways, all of this to say is that I do think that Kent Hughes does have something up his sleeve. He's probably been working the phones all summer. We keep talking about the second line center, and I do think that's a little bit more complicated than just getting a guy. Because as I talked about on, I don't know when the podcast is going to air, but I was on Absent Minded with a very special episode about the top 25 under 25. And I can't tell you when it's coming out because I also can't tell you when my players ranked. But anyway, so one of the discussions we were having, Andrew Berkshire was on there with Patrick Bixel, was just, how much these guys like each other, right? How strong this room is, how everybody understands the assignment, right? How they all are playing for each other, and how they're going to need this to be sustained for like 10 to 15 years if they're going to be contenders, right? If they're going to be a good team, if they're going to be one of the top of the NHL and not fall apart like a lot of promising teams have, they need that to be sustained. So I do think that there is also a personality hire aspect of that second line center that we weren't really considering. And I know, Ian, you are of the belief that it is up to the room itself to kind of sort itself out, right? Like the players, the leaders, the organization. But I do think like you have to be the kind of player that will buy into that. Like, why has everyone embraced Patrick Laine? Because he's done the same thing, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a dance, right? It's going to be between the management to find a guy who fits with that room, but also up to the room to find to make inroads with the people that come in. I think that's one thing that room has done exceptionally well. You with the Laine experiment, we learned that, right? Like, Laine was the guy that was maligned in both cities he came from, and he comes into that room, and everybody loves the guy, and he loves it there, and that to me was a sign that they can make just about anything work. That's not to say you go and find the worst person you could acquire, right? Like, there are certain people who I don't think would fit in a room like the Canadiens have, or in most NHL locker rooms for what it's worth.
Rangers made him captain.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, or the guy the Rangers just got in JT Miller, right? Like, he just had a whole bunch of problems in Vancouver. I don't know that I want him around. Elias Pettersson.
Wasn't there a rumor that they were going to make him captain too?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, so I mean, like,
they never learn.
It's up to both teams here, right? Like, it's up to both the Canadiens and the players and the front office to make sure that whoever they end up bringing in is of that sort of caliber. Now, the name now turns to Mason McTavish. He's still a restricted free agent. It's been silent on that end. How, like, what happens now there? Like, is this a player that the Canadiens are going to still be interested in? Can they get him for $4.5 million? That I am doubtful of.
They cannot.
But they'll probably have to ship some money out to a team like Anaheim to make something like that work. Again, that's a guy that I'm just throwing, throwing a name out there because we've heard the name around.
I think if you're the Canadiens, you aggressively try to pursue it now and worry about the money later.
Yeah,
because now you
I
can't.
think that's fair.
You're no longer like in the red. Like, you know, when you look on like Money Puck or whatever, it's not red anymore.
No, it's green. It's finally
It's
green.
green.
It's not going to feel to me like when Bergevin had $9 million in cap space and just didn't do anything with it, because that was way more money and a smaller salary cap, so it meant more that he wasn't using it. Like, it's a good chunk of money, but it's not like sign a first line player money. So we need to we understand what the parameters are for this. Any final thoughts on this trade before we head out for the weekend and have our listeners enjoy it and join us back here on Monday as well for some more analysis on this trade and what's coming next?
I'm just going to reiterate, they better do the one day retire as a Hab thing. Nobody will forgive them if they don't.
Yep. No, he'll retire a Hab. The next stop is Toronto for the Hall of Fame, and then the stop after that is 31 in the rafters. Like, that's the logical progression of things here. So with that, we'll leave that there. Thank you for joining us on this special bonus episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you to Kent Hughes for making our Fridays a little bit busier, but allowing us to get back behind the camera and the microphone to talk to our loyal listeners, who I know are very excited to hear this come out. So with that, you can find the show Locked On Canadiens everywhere that we post things: Bluesky, Instagram, TikTok primarily. Email us lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com for our mailbag questions or just anything that you would like to send our way. We love to get fan mail. We really appreciate it. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys on Monday.